Okay. What am I doing? Tech guy. Moderator tech guy. Okay. Can everybody hear me all right? Okay, good. Thank you very much. For those of you I don't know or don't know me, my name is Jeremy Earl. I'm the president of the Dawson Creek and District Chamber of Commerce. First of all, I'd like to just say how happy we are to be hosting an all candidates forum. We've done it in the past, we hope to do it for the foreseeable future, and the turnout looks like it's great tonight, so we certainly appreciate everybody making the time on this lovely September day. Nicest bit of summer we've had in a while, but no, we appreciate you all taking the time, especially those of you who are employed in agriculture. I know this is a fairly busy time of year for you. I'm not going to take too long because we want to get this going, but I would first just like to thank my fellow directors at the Chamber, Kim Liptek, yes, Candace Wetter, our treasurer, Anthony Adam, and of course our executive director, Kathleen Connolly, who organizes these things. It goes to great effort to see that we can all come out and get a chance to engage our aspiring representatives face to face. So thank you very much for that. Also like to thank our moderator for the evening, Brent Hodson. He'll come up in a moment and explain the rules of tonight's forum to you. But he's going to do a great job, and obviously our candidates. Most of you, I assume, know or have heard of them, but we've got Alvin Stennon, Dale Bumstead, Ron Glossley, and Bud Powell down the line. We're very appreciative of their presence here tonight as well. Regardless of what your politics may be, I think everyone can recognize that it takes a great deal of fortitude and courage to let your name stand for public office. So I'd like to, regardless of the election or outcome of the election, I'd like to thank and congratulate them all for running a good campaign so far, and wish them all the best. A couple housekeeping things with respect to many of you will have had a chance to speak with Anthony at the door, who is taking questions, written questions. If anybody has a question they'd like answered, please write it on there. We'll try and move briskly through them, so we can hopefully get to all of them, but in the event that your question is not answered, our candidates have generously agreed to hang around afterwards outside in the lobby and answer anything you might want to get answered, so I thank them for that, and I encourage you to take advantage of that if your particular question isn't answered. I would ask, applause-wise, when I introduce Brent and the candidates, you join me in giving them a round of applause, and then reserve your applause until the end of the forum, just so we can move along in a timely manner, because we want to make sure we get to as many questions as we can. Given that the Chamber didn't actually submit any questions, they're all questions from people throughout the community, and we'll be, I'm sure, talking to them at a later date about what we want to do. But other than that, all I need to say is please vote. It makes you feel big and strong, and encourage your friends and family to vote. It's important. I know in our last municipal election, City Council, I think the electorate turnout was 21%. I sincerely hope we can do better than that this time. Other than that, thank you very much for your presence here tonight, for your time, and we hope you learned something. Now, without further ado, our moderator, Brent Hodson, and our distinguished panel.
Thanks, Jeremy, for that. Like you mentioned, my name is Brent Hodson. I'll be the moderator for tonight's All Candidates Forum. Just to give you some history on myself, I moved to Dawson Creek here last year, and I worked for Global Spectrum as marketing manager. Last year, I was living in Fort St. John, where I was the associate publisher of the Northeast News and the president of the Fort St. John and District Chamber of Commerce. So just to go over some other rules here tonight, this is a nonpartisan All Candidates Forum, not a debate. There will be questions from the floor, not opinions. If you have an opinion, please contact the candidate directly following the meeting. The forum will include a combination of prepared questions from people that have submitted to the Chamber of Commerce, as well as questions from the floor. So if you got in late and would like to submit a question, please head over to the side over here and write your question down on a piece of paper, and they'll be brought over to me. Questions should be framed in a way that allows them to be read out in 30 seconds or less. I will have control of the forum as the moderator, and if I feel a question has been answered previously, we'll move on to another question. Each question may be directed to a specific candidate or all candidates. The moderator will have the option of asking all candidates to respond to a particular question. The candidate to whom the question has been directed to will have a maximum of 1 minute to respond. The moderator will then ask the question of another candidate who will have another 1 minute to respond. Rebuttal from the original responder is at the discretion of the moderator. We endeavor to give all candidates an opportunity to respond to the questions, and timing will be strictly enforced. Timing is the one tool we have to ensure that we have the opportunity for the maximum number of questions to the candidates in our limited amount of time. So we ask you, the public, to keep your questions short and to the point, and our candidates to respond accordingly. So we drew numbers here earlier tonight, and each candidate will have 4 minutes for the opening statement. Since no one's sitting up front, I will sit there with the timing cards, so just have a look for me right there, guys. And the order that we're going in, oh, it's 2 minutes? All right, my apologies. It's 2 minutes for the opening statements. And the drawing order that is tonight is the same order they're sitting in tonight. So it's Alvin Stedel, Dale Bumstead, Ron Bosley, and Bud Powell. And it will be the same format as well for the closing statement. So Alvin, if you'd like to come up here.
Yay, I am number one. I am number one. This could be tricky, but anyway, I'll try and get close. Anyway, good evening, fellow citizens, Dawson Creek, fellow candidates. I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce for hosting the event, and you, Brent, for being a moderator. And it's great to see the interested people out of here this evening. So the last thing that we'd ever want is to go through all this effort and have no one listening. So anyway, as most of you know, I wrestled for quite a while with my decision whether or not to run for mayor, because before I filed my papers, I considered that the office of mayor and the chance to change the direction of Dawson Creek is going to be a big job. I want to turn Dawson Creek back into an area of fiscal sustainability. This city has spent a lot of funds and energy being environmentally sustainable, and maybe in the process we've lost focus on being fiscally sustainable. I'd like to quote from a couple of articles that were in the Globe and Mail and another one. The city of 13,000 people is posing a balanced budget by siphoning more. Wow. No, it's 4 minutes, not 2. I think she was referring for the 2-minute response.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So do we start over? Or no problem. The city of 13,000 people is posing a balanced budget by siphoning more than 75% of its fair share of funding to cover operational costs for services. And this is without much infrastructure. And from the Alaska Highway News, revelations that Dawson was the 7th biggest overspender out of the province's 25 medium-sized cities caused a stir when residents learned the city budget had almost quadrupled in 8 years. One cannot make any change until one accepts that there is a problem. In my view, the city should be run more like a business and less like a monopoly. The taxpayers of the city are the shareholders and the customers of the city. If the city cannot provide the goods and services that the taxpayer requires at a price they can afford to pay, they won't be here. Some will leave, and the people who replace them in business that replace them may not come. The taxpayers, being residential, commercial, and industrial, are all expressing concerns about their tax bill, all while not being able to enjoy one of the items required to live on, an ample supply of water. We do not live in the desert. There needs to be ample water for both residents and industry if we want this city to continue with growth and become financially sustainable. Excuse me. Some say we have enough water from the current system for 20,000 people. Well, most of us know from experience that we often do not have enough water for the 13,000 we have, plus a bit of industry we have. Without industry, we'll never get to 20,000 people, so it's a moot point. The question of the water pipeline to me is not if, but when, and the sooner the better. When we sell $1,000 of water to industry, we make about $727 profit. That's good business, and every sale reduces the amount we need from taxation. We also will never experience much growth without a functional airport. I've heard of a company that moved their head office to Fort St. John because their plane couldn't land on our short runway. Excuse to me. Ladies and gentlemen, those were huge, high-paying jobs that left with that head office, and the tax structure we could have got from that head office is gone as well. We're sending the wrong message to industry, and if we lose the opportunity to attract other industries, we will not be able to continue building our tax base. Now is our chance. To return the city to fiscal sustainability, we need to analyze every decision. Do we need it? It is essential. Is it essential? What are the revenue implications? How much will it cost? What is the benefit? Can we find a more efficient way to achieve the same result? Do we need to spend close to $1 million a year on outside consultants instead of depending on our own staff? Do we want to continue to reject the learned opinions of local contractors, builders, and experienced people, even our own workers that live here? Many times, offers of advice and assistance have been rejected, and by what I see, could have saved the city a lot of money. Do we need to spend the amount we do traveling all over the country? Well, that's over. I need your support on September 14th. Thanks.
Thank you, Brent, and thank you everyone for coming out tonight, to the Chamber for putting this event on, and I appreciate everybody coming out tonight to give us a chance to communicate our views and the reasons and the purposes behind why we're stepping up into this role of the potential mayor of the city of Dawson Creek. I want to talk first a little bit about my personal history and family. I was born and raised in Dawson Creek 57 years ago. My bride and I have been 38 years raising our family here, and I always appreciate that look in people's eyes because they say, man, he doesn't even look 38. I appreciate that. We have 3 grown adult children and 6 grandchildren, and they really are the purpose for me today in terms of everything that I want to do for this city and this community and this region. Because I think it's so important for us to give back to our communities. My family history is deep in this area. My grandpa Bumstead was a candidate in the 1937 provincial election for Peace River South. And so to me, I reflect on that in terms of where and what it is, gives us this drive to get back into the community, and I think it is our family roots, and that's the primary purpose for me in terms of really feeling the passion to this community. I spent 35 years working for ICBC. The last 12 years I was a regional vice president of operations. In my early days, as we were first married and raising our family, I owned a small business in the community, and I built that little business up over the course of about 2 or 3 years, working at it in a partnership with another gentleman, and spent the time kind of trying to raise some additional revenue to raise that family. And so having understood and developed that skill of running my own kind of business and worrying about what it takes to pay that bill that you got out there and those finances, I do have some of that experience, and that's been a criticism for some people looking at me in terms of why would I run for this position without having any kind of experience. I chaired the Lakeview Credit Union Board. I was on the board for 13 years. I was chair of that board for 10 years. The new building that we have downtown was built while I was the chair of the board. I spent 6 years on city council here from 1993 to 1999. In the last 3 years, in that time with Blair, I looked after the finances. And it was a passion for me in terms of understanding what it takes for a community to understand what those issues around finances are and how important they are for us as a community. I served 6 years on the board of the Northern Health Authority, and I just resigned from the board in 2012. And what a learning experience to sit in a board with a gentleman who I have utmost respect for, and Dr. Charles Jago. The 3 things for me that are critical for us to develop in this community is going to be the finances. And for me, it's understanding now the fair share of revenue that's flowing into this community. We have $13.5 million in 2012 that was collected in taxes from the residents for property assessment. We had another $16.5 million that came from revenue from other sources. 11.5 million of that money came from our fair share. Over the past 8 or 10 years, we've been starting to feel that fair share money flowing back into the operations of this community. And for me, the focus has to be that we need to be moving that money out of our operating budget into capital so that we have the capacity to deal with those infrastructure issues in the future. We got people in this community whose homes are flooding with raw sewer today and have been over the last 2 or 3 years, and we need to be diligent about that in terms of how we fix infrastructure and make sure we have the revenues to have quality, healthy, sustainable services in this community. Thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. I have never done this before, so abide with me. Well, I've lived here since I bought myself. I've lived here since Frank Ross, I think last time was 1960. And been an operating engineer all the time, building roads and airports and sewer and water. Then my parents did lodges and I had TED service, which wasn't a very good job to start with. I had a choice to run a lodge or take care of my parents, so I chose to take care of my parents and lost the lodge. So I thought it was a good choice because you want to see your parents before they're gone. So getting back to what's called Dawson Creek, it was brought to my attention that there's a bunch of senior citizens sitting in the hospital with no place to stay, which is actually kind of a crime because these are the founders of this town. And is that going to happen to us too? So somebody's got to do something about it. And as far as the money that goes to build these homes and that, I figure federal government can step up to the plate for that because these people fought for our country. I'll take care of them. And there's quite a few issues that have to be dealt with in town here, like sewer, water, infrastructure. You've got to have the capital to make it grow. The infrastructure going up is more than the public can actually afford. It's going backwards. But whoever wins this year election, I guess gets to go down to Vancouver and talks to the Premier for 5 days, and therefore maybe get in there and talk to the federal government and the provincial government and the oil companies and start giving us money because this town's growing pretty fast and it needs more money to grow. So there's more than one problem facing Dawson Creek. There's like the senior citizens, there's sewer and water back up, there's snow removal, there's wasted spending that has to be changed. You know, like it's got to be positive input where the money is spent instead of just uselessly everywhere. And I don't want to make any false promises, but I sure do my best to make audience. That's about all I got to say.
I'm back. I don't know if you don't come, Jack was moving, I'm back. Well, that girl that he was looking at through the window with that soft light was like my wife when I said I'm going to run for mayor. The most often question I get asked most often is, why after not running in 2011 did you decide to run for mayor now? The biggest reason is that, as you may know, and as you can tell by the way I speak, I went through some pretty serious cancer business about 6 years ago. So 5 years ago, or I mean 1 year ago, they told me, Bud, you're cured. You have no more chance of getting cancer than anybody else in this audience. That pressed the reset button. When Mike stepped down to run for MLA, I felt that it's easy to talk against how bad we have been and how we've done so many things. But I think we've done a lot more good than bad. And I wanted to put my name forward to give the citizens a chance to make that decision. I think it's, it's easy to pick on things until you're in the chair and you know what has to be done. One thing we did at that time was created a very meaningful vision statement. And that's on the back of my pamphlet, if you read that. And that's what we govern everything we did by. Not only all those 4 pillars to make this a livable community was very important to us and will be very important to me as we go forward. I want to touch on the 2 things that seem to be bothering everybody, fiscal gap and the water pipeline. First of all, Dawson City is only, or Dawson Street, I'm sorry, my hometown. But Dawson Street is only one of all the municipalities in Canada that suffers from fiscal gap. No matter how you spent fair share money, no matter what you did, you would still be suffering this fiscal gap because it's not a money thing. It's a government thing, it's the way people think, it's what people want. It's hard. People want more and more, more and more. Just like you want 2 cars, 2 whatever. People want more, and somebody has to pay for it. As far as the fiscal gap is concerned, first of all, you have to attack the income side. And everybody mentions fair share, but nobody mentions that fair share right now is sitting in limbo because we're waiting to get it approved to 2030, approved by the, it's approved by the Premier. That has to be done immediately. If I become mayor, that will be done. And I'll use the discussion to open up the discussion to move fair share from a grant to a tax. So the government has put its economic future on LNG. If they're going to do that, they're in our backyard. So we have to get our fair share of that. And for the pipeline, I absolutely will never ask the taxpayers of Dawson Creek to support a pipeline for industry, for the oil and gas industry. I worked in the oil and gas industry for 35 years. If they need water, they'll get it. If they want to build a pipeline and I can piggyback with them with the citizens of Dawson Creek, very good. But the citizens of Dawson Creek should not have to pay for it. It's absolutely wrong. It's a scare tactic by certain people in this area. As I said, my speaking is somewhat difficult. I know, Brent, I'm up to time.
8 more seconds.
Thank you all for coming. It's so important to see you all here tonight.
So I'd like to mention again that if you have a question that you would like asked, just head over to the side over here and mark your questions down on a piece of paper, and they'll be brought up to me and they'll be added into our pile here. So I do have a stack of questions that were asked to the chamber earlier this past week, and we have the first question will be for all 4 candidates, and you have 1 question to, or 1 minute to 1 minute to answer the question.
I know, we had 2 minutes.
Is it 2 minutes? All right, I'm sorry, people. I've moderated a while. I'm a little rusty on the rules, so it's 2 minutes. I apologize. All right. So with this first question, a lot of people have seen your signage throughout town. So can you explain to us in 2 minutes what your slogan on your sign means to you? And just to remind everyone what the slogans are, we have Alvin with "It's Your Money, Trust Alvin." Bud is "Strong, Balanced Leadership." Dale is "Proven Leadership," and Ron is "Common Sense." There's mics at your table, guys, so you can just answer the question from there. And we'll start with Alvin on this one.
Anyway,
Thank you. As I was contemplating running, some people that I know fairly well sat with me, and we decided to try and figure out some kind of a slogan. And the question was asked of me, what do people think of you? Like, what are 1 or 2 key words that would be important to people? And we ended up with words like integrity and honesty and fairness and all the rest. We ended up with the word trust. So, that was the slogan is "Trust me," and my concerns, of course, to return fiscal responsibility back to the city, fiscal sustainability. So as it says on there, it's your money, trust Alvin.
All right, we'll continue on the line with Dale.
Yeah, my history really, both in my employment, my career with ICBC, I started as an insurance adjuster. I worked myself up to a regional vice president of operations for 12 years, very successfully. I was vice president of the broker relations and sales for ICBC, responsible for $3.2 billion in the distribution network for ICBC. I was the chair of the board of the Lakeview Credit Union for 10 years, doubled the assets of that organization in that 10 years that I was the chair. Built the capital adequacy and the liquidity ratio of that organization to one of the most solid credit unions in British Columbia. Built a new facility, a new building that this community has been extremely proud of, and still continues to be an icon in this community, in my view. As the Northern Health Board, I was appointed as the vice chair of the board to Dr. Charles Jago, and I just believe that those competencies that I've exhibited in my career and volunteer organizations has proven I have the leadership capabilities and competencies for people to believe I have the vision, mission statement, and corporate and the strategic knowledge of how to deliver an effective plan for this community.
Great, thank you. We'll go down to Ron.
Yeah, I didn't get much say on mine there. They just kind of put it on my picture, you know, it's common sense. I don't know what a guy would say other than common sense, I guess. But yeah, I'm kind of new to this here. You'd have to bide with me. I'll do my best to change things and make things a lot better. I know there's a lot of issues that have to be dealt with, and federal, like I said, federal, provincial, oil companies, everybody has to step up to the plate and get these things paid for. You gotta have the money there first before you can fix the things that are wrong. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Okay, and Bud.
Thank you, Brad. I think balance is a very, very good word at this time. If you read my brochure, we must balance our efforts to promote and grow all four sectors of the economy. We cannot rely 100% on the gas and oil and gas industry forever. We're so fortunate to have four pillars: agriculture, tourism, forestry, and oil and gas. How many communities have you seen lose their number one and suddenly they're scrambling for something else? We've lost them. Let's make sure they all come along on the train with us. And then we must balance our growth with the goal of sustainability. I'm very concerned about sustainability, and I use sustainability, which includes everything from climate change to how we water our gardens. Everything's involved in having a community that is sustainably responsible. And we must balance the sustainability with the goal of supplying our citizens what they need. Not only water and oil and, you know, wood for their stoves or whatever it is, but they must also have something to do in our community. And you talk about people not coming or living here. The biggest reason they're not coming is we have nothing to offer for them outside their doors. I think we've done a great job in supplying that in the last few years. I mean, you can talk about the event center or the swimming pool or all you like, but how about the soccer pitches? How about the baseball diamonds? How about, you know, the skate parks? All these things are absolutely critical to people living here. Thank you.
Thank you, Bud. So our next question.
All right, maybe I'll just, can everyone hear me if I just talk like this? Fantastic. So with the current attention to the airport, will you support an expanded runway? And do you currently fly from the local airport when you travel? We'll start from the other side, so we'll start with you, Bud.
Yeah, first of all, no, I would not extend the airport. I don't think there's any financial rationale for doing that. Unfortunately, we live between two very active airports, and as such, WestJet and Air Canada aren't going to come here. It's as simple as that. I mean, I know Mike talked to WestJet when they moved to Port St. John. They simply told them, you're too close to Grand Prairie. Why should we spend all the money to locate in Dawson Creek when we're in Grand Prairie? Fort St. John's up the north, because I say we're that much further to the north. The other thing on this airport was so important that big sign out there says regional airport. There's nobody pays for that except the city of Dawson Creek. And if I become elected mayor, I will change that. Who uses the airport? Whoever uses the airport should start paying for it. They talk about the mines coming and some of the rich and gentlemen. If they're coming, then they need the airport as much as we do. And why should the citizens of Dawson Creek pay for it all? They keep saying they need it for air ambulance. Well, most of those air ambulances were oil and gas workers that work outside our borders. So to me, that's the most important thing. And I do fly out of here if I can, but like everybody else, you fly connections that meet other airplanes, other places, or meet business commitments. And we don't have that availability here. To keep the airport going the way it is, we have to get airlines that will commute at a decent time. And the only way we can do that is keep them if we all use them.
Yeah, on the airport, it isn't quite a mile, because I've worked on it a couple of times, and I don't know who stopped it from going right out to the end there. It could have been a mile and a half, but they put that green plant there that it could have been out to there. It still could, but I mean, we are losing a lot of stuff over it, and I don't believe the city should have to pay for it either. That's kind of a federal, provincial thing. And that's to be brought up when you're down there talking to them. But I'm sure that Fort St. John, when they got their directional airport, it wasn't the taxpayers who paid for that one. I think they got the funding for it. And then there's the second one that does have to be looked into before it gets carried away. If we do have to have an airport, and there's actually a spot right across the road from the existing road there. There's a room there for a 3-directional airport before they sell that land or put it into housing or something. You know, it should be looked into. If they're going to have to build one, that's what they should do, something in there. Anyway, that'll be looked into as you got the money to do it. Thank you.
So for me, there's a couple aspects to the airport. And first of all, the subsidy to the operations of the city right now are in the area of $750,000 or $800,000. The growth that I think our community is going to be faced with in the next 5 to 10 years, we absolutely need to have an airport in order to have that ability to attract industry into our communities. We see 25 years ago when Tumbler Ridge was being developed and Quintec Coal and Tech Mining, that airport was flying 737s out of here with the activity of workers. And so for me, we need to ensure that we do all we can. Tumbler Ridge is going again. Anglo-American, the Peace River Coal have just announced their increase in operations there. So we're going to feel the effects of that. I honestly believe we need to do all we can to ensure we have an operational, functioning airport. And so you do it in one of two ways. You've got to either increase your revenues to it or decrease your operating costs. One of the guys that worked with me at ICBC years ago is now the Vice President of Operations for the Vancouver Airport Authority. I've had discussions with him now in terms of finding ways that we can be more operationally efficient in that airport. The development that's taking place out at the airport now along Vic Turner Way, when that airport was built in 40 or 50 or 60 years ago, the topography of the landing and all of that was developed by guys with a transit and a level. And the GPS technology today has shown that we've got to change there's 3 or 4 lots out at that airport today that we cannot develop on. We're going to lose about $150,000 to $200,000 a year in revenue from taxes because those lots can't be built on. So for me, if we extend the runway by 1,500 feet, we add another 4 or 5 properties potentially to the community that we can build industrial property on and develop another $150,000 or $200,000 in revenue from those lots that we can't today if we don't do something with the runway. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. We do need to have a viable airport to continue growth in the city. If we had no airport, and the airport's been neglected, I think purposely, for a number of years. When I was on council, I asked a couple of times to be put on the airport committee because the individual that was on the committee had not called meetings for a long while. We're back to a group of volunteers in the community that were part of that committee, and they were getting very frustrated because no one was calling them together for a meeting. So I asked, like I said, I asked to be on that, never was put on that committee. So it's been purposely neglected, and now we're paying the price for that. If we don't have a viable airport, you need to have a runway before you can get the planes to come in and land. We didn't have a chance at WestJet because we didn't have a viable runway for it. We lost one of the head offices already because their jet aircraft can't land on our airport, so their head office is now in Fort St. John. We can't build that up, and you got to have the runway before the people can come. If we don't have a viable airport, we won't. Not only will we not have head offices, we won't even have banks, or we'll probably have one bank and a credit union. What's that do? What's that do for the people that are requiring banks, like the housing market and even farm industry? You need to have that. So that would be a step backward to lose the airport, and then, to me, it would indicate that we're telling everybody that we give up.
Thank you, Alvin. So next question, what we'll do is we'll start with Dale. And Dale, what would you do to revitalize the downtown core?
So honest to goodness, I've had this question posed to me a few times now since we put our hands up in the air and talk about our community. And I think back when I grew up in this community, you went downtown Friday nights, all through the course of the year, and special fall fair, Christmas season, and the downtown core was alive and vibrant with people. And we just went downtown to do our shopping and interacted with our friends and neighbors. And so to me, I think, first of all, we have to create an atmosphere and an energy in our community and the downtown core for people to want to go down there for a purpose. And so I've talked to some of the downtown business people about this concept of starting maybe once a month, once or twice a month, Wednesday evening from May through to October or whatever the time frame, and we close our downtown core off to traffic. We're going to have a walk, just people walking down there, have a band, have a free barbecue that's supported by the business community, and create an energy in our downtown core where people go down just to interact and meet with each other. I think if you start to create that environment, that awareness, and that energy in your community, it starts, then the business community start to look at it, hopefully increasing their own revenues because they got more traffic. And second of all, people who are looking at starting a business may look at that and say, you know what, the community is trying to create that culture, that awareness, that event in our community to be able to have an active, vibrant downtown core. I think we need to do those things and start at wherever we can to create that engagement with our community and people to go down there. I wandered around downtown the other day on Saturday afternoon, and I went into every store in the downtown core. And you know, it was amazing to me, because now, normally you go downtown, you just go down to one store. And to me, to go down and see the types of activities and the stores that are down there was an eye-opener for me to go into each and every one of them. And to see that Ladies' Dainty store was amazing.
We'll go over to Ron, please. The question was, what would you do to revitalize the downtown core?
I'm not really sure. We don't have many bars left. You know, it doesn't seem to be anybody wanting to build back on what's gone. So yeah, I imagine something's going to be happening. Maybe a big roller dome. But yeah, there's most definitely. I mean, there's really not enough activity. I don't think there's enough to do. Like. Years ago, I was thinking of putting a roller dome like Red Rock Roller Dome out of Prince George, and having a kind of a dance hall at night and roller skate during the day, to give people something to do. But we are lacking a place to do and something to keep everybody interested in coming downtown. So I imagine I'd like to put that to the people and let them decide and vote on what they would like it done with it. Thank you.
Over to you, Bud.
Well, you know, the downtown has become critical since the fires. That's really made a difference. But this is nothing new. As you know, under Calvin's leadership, we started the Calvin Drug Center. That was going to be the key to revitalizing our downtown. And I still feel that that is the right decision to make. That will bring people downtown, that will make more activity down there, and I think it will also draw new businesses. I think people will see that the activity is going to be there, and people will come downtown. The other thing we need to look at doing, the community charter now allows us to make tax exemptions and do things with the tax base to try and promote business in certain areas of the downtown. I would certainly like to look at this seriously. I know it's a contentious question because you don't want to give a tax base to somebody that set up a store that competes with one across the street. I don't know if we can be selective, but I think, you know, we need a dry cleaners, we need a menswear store. If we can target somebody that would come in and build this type of store, then we can use our tax break to promote that. It's the third most important thing I see on the horizon for the city as to how we get the downtown back up and running, and I think the opportunity's there. You know, it's not a new problem. We've faced this for the last 15 years, and every downtown is facing the same thing as the big box stores grow. But it's something we have to wrestle with. It won't go away in a hurry, and it takes the people of the city, it takes you people to want to use the downtown. And if you want to use it and show that you're down there, then people will come.
Thank you, Bud, and then we'll go over to Alvin.
Thank you. I think the biggest impediment to having downtown revitalization is the high tax rate that the retail sector and industry have to pay. And there's a lot of activities in Dawson Creek, and they're all spread out all over, and a lot of them aren't downtown because it just costs too much to do them there. What I would like to see, and I think there's a way of doing it, one is to lower the retail tax rates, and the other is to look at, on those vacant properties where, you know, there was fires or in the Windsor or whatever, where if we could somehow encourage entrepreneurs to come along and build complexes there with underground parking to get rid of that problem, with the first level being maybe retail, so you could have stores or even offices, and then above that have apartments and condos, and that would as long as the taxation rates were low enough, people could do that. Years ago that was looked at the Windsor, and it wasn't completed, and I think at the time it was a too new a thing for most people. Now we have people living in areas like that. You can go up to 96th and 8th Street, and a few years ago everyone would have thought you'd never live there. But now there are people living there, and so that might fly now, and that would certainly help downtown. There'd be people walking around down there again. They don't necessarily have to drive. If the Calvin Crook Center ever does get completed, there won't be much parking if there's ever an event going on there anyway, so it may solve both those problems. But it certainly is an issue, and I think there's ways of challenging it. The other is to bring the downtown merchants together and get ideas and suggestions from them.
Thank you, Alvin. So the next question. How do you plan on getting checks and balances set up for city spending on capital projects to stop all of the cost overruns that we have incurred in the past? We're going to start with Ron with this question, and this is for all the candidates. Yeah, each candidate's going to answer the question.
Well, I didn't quite get the idea. What was the question again?
The question was, how do you plan on getting checks and balances set up for the city spending on capital projects to stop all the cost overruns?
Well, that takes, it's almost like I said, they call it fair share. I don't know if we're getting our fair share, if it's being spent right, or how much it is. I haven't looked at the books, I don't know what they got, but obviously it's not getting done anyways. So. I mean, looking at it that way, I would say you just have to, when a guy gets down to those meetings down in Vancouver, you have to talk to the Premier and get more money for this budget here, and infrastructure should not be put on the taxpayer. I believe it should be put on what it's cost. I mean, people are probably moving here to work for oil companies. Infrastructure, I don't think it should be stuck on the people. Maybe the oil companies should step up and pay a little of this infrastructure or a little more or whatever.
federal, provincial, and oil companies. That's about my opinion of giving the money.
I'm next, sir. You know, I experienced, of course, the event center and the multiplex and the problems we had there. I know with the shopping control center there's been problems, but really, you know, what way do you go? We've tried everything. It's just getting the right people to manage these things. The city does not have the expertise in all these areas to do it themselves. Believe me, they do not. So, you know, we went different ways on both of the projects. In both times, we were let down by contractors. Contractors did not perform as they're expected to. And that's still ongoing today, as I understand it, although I haven't been there for the last couple of years, but a lot of the delays are due to the contractors. And of course, as soon as you start getting delays, you have overruns. It's just any project that you build. If you build your own house, if it's delayed, you have overruns. And you know, it's a matter of getting the expertise, and it's a challenging situation. Believe me, the people on council at the time and staff wrestled with this problem. I don't know the answer to it. I honestly don't. You know, it's just something that the expertise out there, it seems very hard these days to get the people that know what they're doing in order to give you proper estimates and proper time schedule. This is what you get to approve is not what the truth is, and not having the expertise to look at that and say this is true. In the Shopping Trust Center, we hired expertise to check on expertise, and it's obviously failed. So I don't know the answer, but I certainly know that it's a problem, and whoever is in charge, the mayor or CEO, is something they're going to have to wrestle with at this time.
And then right on to this.
Thank you. I think every decision that comes before council should have the financial implications attached to it, and they're usually not. So that would be an important part of it. And I could name them, but I don't want to get into a debate unless someone wants to. Anyway, the other thing is I would, instead of using the administration of the city to lead on those kind of construction projects that we've done, I would look to a group of citizens in the community that have expertise in the field and try and work with them to put forward some kind of a committee and have them do it, or at least be in charge of it, because they know more about it than most of these consultants that we pay tons of money to, and then we end up with a huge additional cost, and quite often we don't even have the facilities that we actually anticipated.
The aspect the city's faced over the last probably 10 or 12 or 13 years with taking on 2 or 3 really significant programs, projects, the multiplex and now the Canada Event Center. And first of all, from my view, the decisions that are made in council are made at the time with the best information and with the best decisions hopefully you can make with that information that's provided. And so for me, in hindsight, you look back at them in hindsight, and it's always, as they say, 2020. From my perspective, having had some history now in the Fort St. John Hospital with the Northern Health Board, I think honestly we need to engage and look much differently at the public-private partnerships of the 3P process, to try to engage the private partnership with our communities and business community to try to engage those in those big programs. But honestly, from my view, and I say this in all sincerity, we got to lock back a little bit on some of the huge projects that we've taken on. And to me, that's the fair share money for infrastructure in the future. If we're going to grow this community, we better be diligent about it in terms of how we're going to have the financial capacity to deal with those large projects. And I think that's the key component for me in terms of what we need to do looking forward.
Yep. This question is directed for Alvin. Alvin, you have indicated you are in favor of the water pipeline during the campaign. You have received endorsements and financial support from your campaign from the Southeast Oilmen's Association. Are you concerned this may appear you are supporting industry over residential water needs?
Without industry, we'll have no need for residential water because we'll be sitting here at 13,000 or less, and we need the industry to grow the community. You know, as I said before, people say we might have enough water here for 20,000 people. Well, I guarantee you, I've talked to a lot of older people that have for years experienced a water drought or water shortage in Dawson Creek. It's been ongoing. Why it hasn't been dealt with before is beyond me. I think people have got their head in the sand. It's one of the things that's recurring is that when I'm talking to people is an adequate source of water. Like I said in my opening remarks, we're not living in a desert. We've got water very close. And we can make money selling water. Fort Nelson has paid for their whole water facility by selling water to the water haulers. Every $1,000 worth of water that we sell, we put $727 in the city coffers. That pays for a lot of stuff, pays for part of the pipeline. We've never asked the federal government or the provincial government or industry how they would help us build a water pipeline. Bob Zimmer, a friend of mine, was in the city council on Monday and saying that the federal government would be willing to look at participating with that. You know, and he kind of got a stony look for most of the people in the room, I think. But, you know, we don't even know what it'll cost. When I was in council, it said 100 million, and a group of concerned citizens come forward said 57 million, maybe with 20% overrun built in. You know, we could end up paying a third of that. We might have a pipeline for less money than what they want, for the cost of what they want to put the new dugout in up there.
Thank you, and any candidate can rebuttal if they'd like to.
I'd like to just step in a bit here. I think, you know, what we've done over the past few years, and when we bought that land for the next reservoir, we were planning at that time. And in order to do big projects like that, infrastructure projects, we were looking at the old one-third finance situation. And in order to secure the monies from the other 2/3, it was imperative that we showed that we did all the conservation methods we could. You can't go and ask for money in one hand and they're going to say to you, what have you done to conserve water that you do have? Because we have lots of water. Why should we, just because we have lots of water, why should we waste it? And that's really what they're saying. Every study we've done says there's room for 20,000 population. What happened in the last drought period in 2011, the weir at Bear Hole Lake that we built a few years ago operated beyond expectations. When we wanted to open that weir, we had to get permission from the provincial government to do so. We opened the weir. It solved the problems for that summer. It kept us at stage 4. I admit stage 4 is a bit drastic, but the floods are a bit drastic this year too, so you have to be able to manage both sides of it. When, after the experience in 2011, the provincial government took away that restriction that we couldn't, that we could use that water whenever we want now, because Bear Hole Lake is doing a lot better job than we ever expected. They're now, so the Watershed Committee is now looking at the way that Bear Hole Lake is replenishing itself.
I'll make it a 1 minute chance to respond. Yeah, and then we'll go back to you after this.
Well, I've heard of this, the Bear Hole Lake, and I understand that's of some benefit. I've also heard of a tentative plan to divert water from the Murray into Bear Hole Lake, and that would solve all our problems. The only issue with that is you're still running that water through a manure pile before you get it here.
So I got asked right as soon as I announced I was going to run for this position, what my position was on with respect to a pipeline or a water reservoir. And I clearly communicated at that point, we need to have the financial capacity to build whatever we do for infrastructure in the future. The city needs to identify the funding source of how they're going to pay for something. So is it going to come from general debt? Is it going to come from our water utility, or is it going to come from our savings account on our reserves? So if we allocate that we're going to spend $50 or $60 million for a pipeline, we need to identify that funding source. And that's going to impact our taxes, if we don't have the ability to pay for it, by about a 30 or 35% increase, or we put it under our water utility and a self-funding utility through the water and sewer, which would cause our rates to go to about 3 times what they currently are today. And so for me, my point is, we need to be diligent about that fair share money. We've got $8 million of fair share money today going into our operating budget. We need to get that money moved out. We need to engage the community in the conversations about how we do that with sound policy, and get so that we have the capacity financially to pay for a pipeline if we need it. And that's a decision the people of Dawson Creek make, not us. We identify the funding source, how and what it's going to impact the people, and then you get to choose how that's going to impact you and how we're going to pay for it.
Thank you. So this next question is for all candidates. What is your stand on helping our community senior citizens maintain a healthy financial outlook? And Alvin, do you want to go first? Sure.
Well, the biggest problem that the senior citizens face is they're on fixed income, and taxation rates and utility rates keep rising. We have to work at reducing those rates, and only we can do that is to build the industrial economy of the community. As I said, just the one thing, water alone. We sell enough water, that money can go towards taxation rates. So we've got to reduce the amount of spending that we have, the wasteful spending. There's a lot of stuff going on that we need to get rid of. There's a lot of travel. There's the use of the consultants that we spend a lot of money on. And I've seen it in families where they come across a bunch of money, or even some of them wins the lottery. Like pretty soon they're just buying this and buying that, spending this, spending that. And then sometimes their money runs a little low, and then they've got to panic, wondering how to handle it. So for senior citizens, we must reduce their cost of living here, because a lot of them have expressed concerns about the cost of their tax, the cost of the water, and now we're going to have wintertime and PNG and stuff, and we've got to reduce their costs so they can stay here.
Okay, thank you. We'll go down to Dale.
So I spent about a week ago, I went to the South Peace Community Resources Society for Community Living. And you see that building on 102nd Avenue at the corner of 14th Street, and you know that they're providing services to our community for both seniors, low-income seniors, persons with disabilities. And I needed to understand a little bit more, because for me it's the services that are provided in our community, but we better understand what's going on. And if we're taking on a significant role, as the mayor, of the CEO of this community, you should have an understanding and an appreciation of some of those services that are underway. Society, that's Community for Living, has 130 people that are employed in this community. They have a budget of $7.3 million. They provide 125 residences for people with low-income seniors and people with disabilities. And to me, those are the awareness. Ministry of Children and Family, Community Living BC, through the provincial government, we need to be aware of those things that are going on within our community to ensure that we're there supporting and lobbying those in the provincial government or the federal government, whoever, to ensure that we assist them where possible. I know that the Rotary Manor and the Peace Haven in Puscoopi, there's discussions ongoing right now with respect to some alternate uses for that Peace River Haven. And to me, that's our job as community leaders, to ensure we're there supporting our MLA and our MP for those alternate uses, and ensure we get the funding to support and engage those facilities for the futures for our seniors. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we'll move on down to Ron.
Yes, well, number one, I think if I got down there to Vancouver, I'd be talking to our premier and senior citizens. That's got to be brought up, that we're only getting $1,200, $1,300 a month to live on, and all these government people are going home with 100 and 200,000 a year. You know, I mean, it's not right, and it's never been addressed that our seniors can't live on this $1,200, $1,300, or $1,500 a month. It just doesn't work, and that has to be addressed. That has to be brought right up to Harper, you know. And obviously nobody's even turning a blind eye to it. And the second part of that is, I don't know who started it in Alberta, but they had the one tax taken away because of their oil royalties. But back then, well, now we have enough oil here that one of our taxes should disappear. And how come that ain't looked into, you know, that we'd only have the one tax, and that would kind of help out too. So that would be my agenda, to get senior citizens more money so we can live. And get that one tax gone, and then we can deal with financial issues.
Thank you, Ron. We'll head off to Bud next.
Yeah, thank you. I must commend Dale because he's touched on the points that I have in the subject, and you know, as far as utilizing the services that we have. And I guess I'm the only one up here that really is a senior citizen, so it probably affects me as much as anybody. I know what how small those checks are that we get. But you know, I think another way of looking after the seniors is making sure that we have a safe, comfortable community that they can live in. So when they walk out their door, they're not scared, so that the sidewalks are in good shape so they don't fall, so that, you know, they feel there's things that they can do. And you know, I was at the seniors hall the other day, and it's a great facility, run very well, and I think as mayor, and our job is to just make sure that the seniors have somebody, if there is a problem, don't be afraid to come and talk to us about it, see what we can do. We don't have much control over government, you know, the senior government policies. All we can do is lobby and work on your behalf. We do have control over taxes. Unfortunately, it takes so much money to run a city, and you know, if you live in a house that's value has gone up $200,000 in the last 2 or 3 years, it's a sad reality. That's the way it is, and it's you know, it's hard on all of us on fixed income. There's no doubt about that. But I think, as well as income, it's safety in the community for the senior citizens. I really, that concerns me as much as anything, that they can walk outside their door and feel comfortable. And you know, with our booming economy, that becomes a challenge for all of us. Everybody has a lot of money, and that's not always good. Thank you.
Thank you, Bud. So this next question goes into tourism. As mayor, would you push for improved services such as additional sandy dumps and more RV parking, as well as extended hours at the visitor centers to capture early and late evening travelers? And we'll start with Dale on this question.
Yeah, I think, you know, Bud talked earlier about some of the 4 pillars of our economic drivers for our community. And to me, this community has always started out in 50 or 60 years ago as an agricultural-based community, and still has a huge roots to that. But tourism has also always been a significant driver for our community from the summer months when we see that traffic going up the highway and attracted into our community. And so I think you use that as an opportunity, and you leverage every opportunity you can in terms of trying to increase the activities that allow people to come, that are coming into your community for a specific purpose, to hold them here for as many nights as you can, and provide those options of services. Now, at the same time, there's always the balance to me in terms of how do we provide those services, and how do we ensure that we've got the sustainability, financial sustainability, to continue to provide them. And so to me, I think we work with our Chamber of Commerce, our business community, in terms of ensuring that we can leverage whatever opportunities the city have in our own infrastructure to be able to support those that are ongoing where they can't be or aren't being provided by the private sector. But to me, it's always, first we want to try and enhance and engage our business community to leverage those opportunities that exist, and then how can the city assist and complement or supplement those things that can't be provided or aren't being provided by the private sector.
Thank you, Dale. Now on to Ron with that question, please. It's as to do with tourism. What would you do? Would you push for improved services such as additional sandy dumps, more RV parking, and extended hours at the visitor center to capture the early morning and late evening travelers?
Well, I believe that we'd have to deal with our own problem first. That we could improve the ones we got, but we do have our own to deal with first, and then, like you say, as the surplus amount of money comes in, that we can do those things to bring in tourism, it'll follow.
What a joke, 2 minutes and me talking tourism. Absolutely impossible. But of course I will do whatever I need to do to promote tourism. When I moved here 15 or 16 years ago, 17 years ago, 18 years ago, I forget, I could not believe how little was done with this gold mine that we have here. Having the greatest icon in British Columbia, the Alaska Highway, and the little we did to promote it. So I will do everything we can. I will support tourism 100%. I sit in the Northern BC Tourism Board, and I'm just passionate about that industry. So anything that you want in tourism, I'm looking.
I think I'd rely more heavily on private enterprise to come up with ways, imaginative ways that they can keep the people here. With regard to having earlier or later sandy dumping, to me that would encourage them not to stay. So I'm not sure that would be something you'd want to do. I'd rather look at some way to keep them here. So, thanks.
Okay, next question is for all candidates, and we'll be starting with Ron with this one. Has anyone thought about changing the tax structure so that the oil companies that own our city's prime corner lots will be forced to do an environmental cleanup and get those lots back on the market for new businesses, or pay big time to leave them vacant?
Well, I believe the oil companies have the money to do that, to do just what you said there. They could clean them up and make them good enough to do whatever we have to, but I'm not sure I even quite get the full question that you want.
It's to do with the brown lots in the community that are not viable for any future projects because the land is contaminated.
Yeah, well, I haven't been informed on that, so I imagine there's a few, so I'd have to look into that when the person gets there and find out, and then whoever caused it, I guess, should be held, if somebody's not being held responsible, it should be. That's the way I look at it. It shouldn't be put on the people when they didn't cause it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and we'll move on to Bud next, please.
Yeah, this problem has been ongoing for several years. Dealing with brownfields is nothing new. Unfortunately, our hands are pretty tied. We don't have the jurisdiction to force them to do anything. Unfortunately, the tax system is such if they pay their taxes, you can't do much about it. I do see though that some of them are being cleaned up, and I think that's a positive. And I think it's happened by the oil companies becoming more responsible for an environment in an environmental way, knowing that the bad reputation isn't good for them. So we have to work with the oil companies and with the owners of those lots to get them cleaned up. It's an ongoing process, and it never stops. It never stops. Believe me, all the years I was in council, it came many times. So it's being dealt with as much as we can every day that the City Hall is open.
Thank you. We'll go on to Alex, please.
Thank you. Yes, I know we dealt with that when I was on council too, and their hands were tied. There wasn't much we could do. So what that means then, if the city bylaw is ineffective, or you can't create one that would handle that, then you have to look at the provincial government to come up with some standards and put some teeth into it, so we don't have these vacant lots. The oil companies sit on those and they pay their piddly tax per year, and to them it means nothing. And now, here recently we took the frontage tax off, and we charge just for the water hookup, so their taxes actually went down, so it costs them less to keep those vacant properties now than it did before. But I think we'd have to put some pressure on the provincial government to enact some legislation so we can deal with it. And we know some of those guys.
Yeah, as the guys have indicated, the community charter that we operate under only gives the city the opportunity to set the zoning or the use of the property. And once that's set, the city then decides the rates of the various classes of property, residential, multifamily, industrial, commercial, whatever it is. And then the rates for that assessment is set by council, and the ratio of the taxes that are going to be collected on those rates then determine what they pay. We can't change that without impacting all of the other businesses that may be in a similar classification. And so, to me, I think the issue is one of ensuring that we do what we can under our development permit areas to include the unsightly stuff and try to engage the owners of those properties to clean them up to a more suitable view. And I want to raise one issue when I'm talking about that, because we spent 15 or 20 years ago, we spent as a community millions of dollars in our downtown core doing the downtown business beautification. We put in handicap curbs, the nice sidewalks, and what's happening to them without doing that investment, our own, in fixing up and ensuring we maintain the integrity of our infrastructure, we're seeing that decay. For me, the quality of our community and the view that we give to our citizens and tourists traveling up our main streets of 8th Street and Alaska Avenue, if you look at it, just look at it, we see it every day, but we don't really look at it. You see how unsightly there are some, we just allow the community to decay, in my view. And I think we need to be taking the initiative and the leadership role as this community to bring back the beautification of the view that our people and our communities have, as well as our business community, to ensure that we're leading the way.
Thank you. So this next question will be our last question of the evening before we go into closing statements. All the candidates will be staying behind after the candidate forum is finished. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask each candidate, they are sticking around. So we do ask you to stick around as well. So for the last question of the evening, and we'll start with Bud on this question. What are your plans for utilizing the land that the old swimming pool sits on?
I'll be quite honest with you, we've gone through round and round about what to do that with that over the years, and there's several good suggestions that have been put forward, but like all other good suggestions, they all cost money. So I think what happens there, as far as I'm concerned, that is something we have to take to the public. First of all, we have to see if somebody's interested in building something there. We've talked about water bars, we've talked about all kinds of things. If we can get somebody interested in building something, then fine. We held off on doing something for I don't know how many years because somebody had an idea what they were going to do. We kept nursing it, but it finally fell through. So it really is up to the community and the business section to come up with something that is viable for that property. The city is not going to build something. This should have to be somebody else.
Thank you, Bud. We'll go on to Alvin.
Yeah, you know, that building was, I'm not really condemned, but it was taken out of service as a swimming pool quite a few years ago, and it still looks in pretty decent shape. And I've had other people come to me lately and say, well, you know, we should be using it for something. It was going to be a heat sink for a while, and that didn't develop. And, you know, one option would be maybe an indoor water park that could be used all year round. You know, it's got the facility for that. You could do some work in there. You could put a coffee or a shop up on top or something like that, have private enterprise in there and all that. The other could be, and I don't think it's big enough, but some young people said, you know, how about an indoor skate park or something? Well, I don't, you know, maybe, but there are things we could probably use it for. I don't think, you know, the building hasn't fallen down, so it's probably still fairly structurally sound. I mean, we're not working with salt and water on it, and chlorine, I don't think, you know. Anyway, I don't think it's as bad a shape as what we were given it to be when we really felt the need to build a different swimming pool.
Thank you. And off to Dale, please.
So one of the ideas that I've been plowing around over the last 2 or 3 weeks is we hear when the Premier of the province of British Columbia over the years is trying to engage industry back into investment in the province of British Columbia. They do the China trade mission or they do the Middle East trade mission. So I've been working on the concept of, for the city of Dawson Creek, on behalf of city, council, and the business community, a Calgary trade mission. And develop a marketing plan for the industry to say, here's what the amenities this city has to offer. We have an amazing multiplex with an amazing swimming pool and a riding center. We have amazing facilities that would enhance any community that would love to have those. And to me, I need to be able to go to the big industry in Calgary, along with the community businesses, that are not only supplying business in our communities, the restaurants, the hotels, the service sector, and demonstrate to these large oil companies why Dawson Creek is a great place to live for your employees and to do business. And to me, that location is an absolute prime location to sell industry on. You come in here and set up. We want to develop a multi-facility head office location, office structure for all of them. I want CNRL, I want Apache, I want Murphy, I want Encana. I want those guys in here set up in our community, and to me, that downtown location would be an absolute perfect place for development, and it revitalizes our downtown core and creates that traffic down there on a daily basis, because you could, in some instances, have upwards of 100 or 150 or 200 office workers potentially working in that location. To me, it's an absolute prime location to be able to do that. And I think that's what we need to be doing as our community, is marketing this community to that industry of why you want to be here. Because we have amenities to deliver that. I'm sick of being second to anybody else in this community or in this region. I want us to be the lead.
Thank you, Dale. I'm going to go with Ron, please.
Yes, well, somebody phoned me on that. Their senior said that they can't really make it over to that in Canada Center. It's a little too far for some seniors. And why isn't this pool at least left open instead of doing nothing right now? So I'd say for the time being, why isn't it opened up? Because a lot of seniors live right in that area. They could go there. It would make it a lot easier for them. Just the same as I was looking at that school, it's doing nothing too. That could be turned into a seniors home. I think, it's got all the facilities instead of our seniors sitting in the hospital with no place to go. So that's all in the same block. They'd have the senior citizens would be right downtown. With the swimming pool, a place to stay, skating rink there, and the dance hall, and the meetings, everything. I figured it's that's a pretty good spot.
All right, thank you very much, Ron. So we're going to go into the same order that we did the opening statements with oh, sorry. No, Bud started.
No, I started.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to start with Alvin, then Dale, then Ron, and then Bud with their closing statements. And with their closing statements, I'm just going to make sure, is it 2 minutes? 2 minutes for the closing statements. 3 minutes. All right. I'm going to check these things just to make sure. I'm going to be sitting in the front again, so you guys are more than welcome to use the podium, and I will be timing you. And it's 3 minutes for closing statements, please. I thought it was 4. I thought it was 2. Well, thank you all for. Is this thing on? I know it's turned on. I'll just grab it. Okay. I know how to run the switch.
Thank you all for paying attention and listening to us. I'm sure that sometimes it's interesting and sometimes it's not, but anyway, for me it was interesting. The one thing I just want to make one correction. Someone mentioned in a question that I was supported by South Beach Oilmans. I don't believe South Beach Oilmans does that. I've had some of their members that have been involved in my campaign, and I've been supported by quite a few different businesses and communities, so I wouldn't want to pick them up, but I certainly appreciate all that support. The one thing that I would think we have to do is, as I said, I spent 9 years on council from 1999 to 2008 under the administration that we currently have. I think to repair some of the problems with the city, to return it back to fiscal sustainability, we need to change the way governing is done in the city of Dawson Creek. We need to return, in my opinion, we need to return back to a portfolio system. Currently now they run as a committee of the whole, and the councillors are charged with trying to investigate everything that they're given. They usually get their agenda on Friday night, it's very thick. They're supposed to vote intelligently on Monday morning, and that's a pretty difficult task. If we had portfolios again, each council would be charged with a certain area of responsibility within the city, and they would have the time to investigate, do some work, research, and be able to answer questions and speak intelligently and defend that particular area, whether it's parks and recs or whatever, even resources, whatever, even tourism. So what that would mean then, though, is that the councillors would then be able to discuss directly with city staff. Right now, they're not really allowed to do that. Everything is shuffled to the CAO, and so it's kind of a funnel there. Quite often what happens then, in my opinion, items get passed, recommendations get passed without proper scrutiny because there's just not time to do it. I would want to have the agendas package given out to the councillors by at least by Wednesday instead of Friday evening, so that there's time. And I would encourage councillors, if there's something you don't understand, to table the motion rather than just putting it through and seeing what the other guys. I mean, I've been there. I know what it's like. If you don't know what's going on and you're scared to ask the question, because if you ask a stupid question, you'll be made to look pretty foolish in front of the camera by another person who knows more than any of us, I think. But anyway. The other point, of course, that's the way to change it. That's the way we got to get the city back to fiscal responsibility. The other thing, as I said before, we got to start running it like a business rather than like a monopoly. 30 seconds. Monopoly, and if the customers, the taxpayers are the shareholders and the customers of the city, and if we can't provide the goods and services they need at the price they can afford to pay, we and they won't be here. Thank you for listening.
First, I want to extend my thanks and appreciation to these guys for putting their hand up and saying they were going to do this, because this isn't a ton of fun when you go through some of this stuff of opening it up. So my appreciation to all three of these guys for running in this campaign. For me, I said this about 2 weeks ago. I'm not doing this because I need a job. I'm not doing this because I need the money. I'm not doing this because I want to use it as a stepping stone to become the MLA or the MP, and not that there's anything wrong with that, it's just not the reason I'm doing it. I'm doing this because this has been my home for 57 years. I'm proud to have raised my family here, proud to have got my grandchildren in this community. I'm excited about the opportunity to be back home and have the time and the energy and the passion back into getting back involved in this community. And it's because this is full of my family, my friends, both old and new. And I'm excited about what this community is going to be facing in the next 5 or 10 years. And I want to be a part of that leadership team that helps try to deliver that. And so from that perspective, I just appreciate everybody coming out tonight. I appreciate the support that I've had from family, friends, and the business community that allow me to help put a campaign together and do the things that we need to do to try to demonstrate that we got the skills, abilities, and competencies to be an effective leader in this community. And for me, Alvin touched on the point about our portfolio system. It's the only system I ever worked in on council. It's what I know. But from my perspective, the first thing we need to do as a community is set the strategic direction of what it is we want to accomplish. What is our plan for this community? And the mission statement of how are we going to get there and how are we going to deliver that? And then the core objectives around those strategic objectives, for me, I've talked about 3 of them. Quality. I want quality services. I want quality infrastructure. I want quality financial statements. I think we need healthy services, healthy infrastructure, healthy financial statements. And finally, sustainable. To me, we need to address the issue of sustainability if we're going to grow this community. Sustainable, can we sustain the services we're providing today in the long term? Can we sustain the infrastructure in the long term of what we're delivering today and in the future that's going to be demanded upon us as a community for growth? And demand sustainability in our financial and fiscal responsibilities for that future. Because I don't want to be having my babies and grandbabies having to deal with that issue in 15 or 20 years. So thanks everybody for coming out tonight. I appreciate it.
Well, anyway, okay. I'll try this again. Well, I was saying, like I'm saying that whoever gets in as mayor this time, it's going to be I think it's pretty short term for whoever gets in as mayor, because there's another election next year. This term's over, so whoever gets in this time pretty well has to go down there and spend that 5 days with the premier, and I'm thinking the only way you can get any answers out of all these big shots, you know, like the premier and the prime minister, And they're supposed to be all the mayors of all BC are going to be down there in Vancouver asking questions of the Premier and that about money. I think the important thing there is start bringing up these subjects about, you might not never do nothing, but bring up senior citizens. See if my pension matches the Premier's, you know, like, what do they do? Wreck the country? You know, great, you don't get a raise. Hey, I'm sitting here seeing, I'm a senior citizen too, bud. And $1,200 don't cut it. And with the infrastructure, now you got 2 sewer bills and 2 water bills, which is not the greatest thing here to shove over. I got 2 bills. Well, what's got to happen here is somebody's got to cough up some money. You get down in that Vancouver and get a hold of them and get the Premier and get the oil companies and the federal government and say, look, everybody needs some more money up here. We need more money as we're growing. I mean, you can't put it all on the taxpayer as things are getting bigger. It's got to be put on the ones that, all this oil money, these royalties that are going down here from the oil companies going down to Vancouver to make Vancouver look better and build it up. I don't see an oil rig down in Vancouver, and I'm not too sure if they didn't come up here, they wouldn't know what one looked like. You know, and it's quite a few $1 million every quarterly goes down there to the federal, to the provincial and federal government. It's not being shared fairly up here at all. So somebody has to get up and just not be scared to tell them, this is how it is. We want a hand and give it to us, so we're going to push it. That's it. And I think Ralph Klein would tell you that too. Thank you.
I want to touch you first on the question of a vision. We've spent a lot of time creating a vision, a mission statement, and 9 principles, how we do it. I invite you at any time to go on the Dawson Creek website and read it. I think, as Dale indicated, that has to be done, that has been done, and it's what I'm fighting for. That's why I'm here. I believe in that vision. I believe in what we've done, and I believe that we have to continue in that thing in order to get it done. Leadership is what's required in anything. I spent 35 years with Mobil Oil, from the Arctic Circle, the Yukon, the Middle East, the Far East, Europe. I proved my leadership ability, but also as a leader, you have to form consensus. You can't do anything on council as a one-man band and don't think you can. The council has to be along with you. You have to work together. In working in these foreign countries with foreign workers, I learned how to do things. I worked with foreign governments to get jobs done. I have strong ability as a leader and a consensus builder. This coupled with 30 years, I've been in business in Dawson Creek for 30 years. I know what the business community is all about. I had 12 years on council. I think this is my qualifications I'm putting forward. I'm very proud of the city. I love this city. I've lived all over the world. I wouldn't live anywhere else. I will live and die here. This is the most beautiful part of the world, and I love the responsibility to try and make it even better. I want to thank the media. I want to thank the media for their coverage of the whole election. I have never received 5 cents funding from anybody. I don't have a campaign team. If I'm elected, I don't want to feel I owe anybody anything. If I'm not elected, I don't want to disappoint anybody that supported me. The only one that supported me in this, and has supported me for the last several years, is my wife. Between her and I, we managed to put this campaign together as it is. I can't afford any bigger signs. I can't afford radio. I can't afford putting a drop in every mailbox. What you see is what you get. You know me, I've been around 12 years, you know where I stand. thank you, media. I rely on you to get my message out. And thank you guys for standing up. I appreciate that. Thanks to the Chamber. And thank all of you for taking an interest in our city.
So thank you to the Dawson Creek District Chamber of Commerce for organizing tonight and asking myself to moderate, as well as thank you to all the candidates for coming here tonight. And just a reminder, Saturday, September 14th is General Voting Day, and it's from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Encana Event Center. And I'm going to pass it off to the President, Jeremy, for closing remarks.
Thank you very much. So if everybody would just join me in giving Brent Hodson a big round of applause for moderating for today. He did a great job. I work with Brent at the event center. What's funny is you should see how many watches this guy has. Just kidding, buddy. Yes. No, in all seriousness, you did a great job. It's nothing more intimidating than an audience of people looking at you. So we want to thank him. Obviously, please, once again, round of applause for the candidates. You did a wonderful job. From what I heard, we had a very constructive, spirited discussion. There's different visions for our city. I would point out that a lot of the discussion did focus around how we can best utilize our potential and how we can grow our community and how we can make the most of the opportunities we see before us. And that is, you know, as a municipality, that's quite a problem to have. So I feel very, very fortunate in that regard. And I do feel very fortunate that so many people came out to hear what they had to say and asked so many great questions of such a broad range of topics. So thank you once again. And lastly, I'd like to thank my fellow directors and Kathleen Conley, our executive director, for helping organize this. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do it. So thank you, Kathleen. And before I wish you all a good evening, I would just point out that our candidates have generously volunteered to stick around and talk with you guys face to face and answer any questions you didn't get answered during the event. So we hope you take full advantage of that. And other than that, as Brent said, voting is on the 14th. So and tomorrow is early voting as well. Yes, I should point that out. City Hall tomorrow, and then the Event Center on the 14th. Okay. So I'll be able to make it. I'll probably cut out of work a little early. 15 minutes. All right. Thank you very, very much, guys. Have a lovely evening, and enjoy the rest of your summer.